Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Expanded Understanding, episode 92. I'm Zach, and Aaron will be joining us shortly. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Any night that you choose to join us, any night that you choose to have fun with yourself. Thanks for doing that. We're big supporters of that, and I would like to talk about our Discord server because in the very near future, I'll be getting a better internet connection. We'll be kind of like changing up the way that we're doing a whole lot of different stuff. And by being on the Discord server, you will put yourself in a position where you already have everything set up to like easily be able to call into the show, interact with us on a daily basis. I've already started bringing up some channels and stuff that I will be basically like posting links to and such as I find cool stuff on the internet. And well, really just a good place to find like new shit and interact with the community. And like I said, since we're going to be switching over there for a lot of other things, it really is a good platform for connecting a whole lot of various different dots, whether it be just basically like voice calling or video calling or just common chatting or posting links and having access to resources. And it's also a place that sometimes I'm using to basically work with my clients, and we're going to in the future be moving towards some various different kinds like mentorship programs and self-mentorship programs, various different things like this. And most of that, a lot of it at least, on the day-to-day basis will take place on the Discord, and Discord will get integrated with other things as we kind of spread out to other platforms and stuff. It gives a good centralized place for the community, whereas YouTube doesn't really do that so much. So the link to our Discord is in the description below. It should still be working. I meant to get it set up again before the show. I'll be getting it set up kind of like during the show with a new invite link to make sure that invite link is I'm actually already in the middle of doing it, as you can tell from my pace getting all screwed up. Edit invite link. Yeah, I'll get it set up. It should already be whatever. We're gonna put it at 100 uses. Generate a new link, copy. Okay, so I'll be updating the thing in the description after the show. I actually can't do it while we're live. I will be posting a link to the Discord that is a fresh link in the thing right now. If you're not already in the Discord, please be happy to join up. Right now, a lot of people don't idle in there. I'm in there all the time. It's encouraged that you do idle in there. That's kind of the standard usage of the thing, having the application open. There's lots of cool Discord channels out there. Most big creators at this point in time have a Discord server that they kind of centralize out of. For instance, we talk about Seven Bomar on here a lot. He has a really good Discord server that has a lot of cool people and a lot of good resources, and a whole lot of other people. So becoming a member of the Discord community is something that is very worthwhile. Good way to meet new friends and stuff. And moving into the future, we're going to start doing a lot more just like kind of like base level community things. Not anything, particularly special where we're doing some like big event or something, but literally just like playing games together and stuff like that. And so I'm creating some channels for that. And I'm really going to start kind of encouraging everybody to kind of do stuff like that as a community, because there's really just like a lot of power in just having fun with each other and having a good time with yourself. And hopefully this platform will facilitate it, so you're going to hear me pushing it a lot more. But please get joined up on that. While you're at it, please like, and if you're new here, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification. We do a lot of different shows on this channel. 3 different shows currently. This podcast, another podcast that was really just before this one. So there's a new episode of that up called Healing Space with one of our other practitioners, Gently Healing. And another one that's called Women's Work International that is with 2 other women that work with us, Angela Miller and Rosia, whose last name I cannot remember right now. Nevertheless, all 3 of these women are very great individuals, and they have a very interesting podcast. Really a lot of good value packed into those things. So really encourage all of you to become members of the community, and everybody that's already a member of the communities, thanks so much for being a part of this. As we do take time to grow it, things like this really do take a lot of time, but really having the people that are core and willing to stick around is so huge. So thank you so much for doing that. Aaron's got our wonderful sunset layout for this evening.
And CBD drink of the night. Please go to our sponsors, Sparkling Black Cherry CBD from Broadspec. No, we don't sponsor them.
Unfortunately, that is not real life yet.
Yeah. No links down below.
Hopefully at some point in time that will be basically a thing that we do. But,
with the music rolling. Yep.
Sponsored
promos.
It takes time. When we've created our own music, then maybe we can do that. Like, too sketchy to, like, push someone else's product without
Yeah, no
actually
doubt.
knowing that the music is completely chill. A lot of our stuff does get like copyright strikes right now, but they're not copyright strikes. They're just like claims. Like if we monetize the video, they would get the
Mm.
monetization, but or at
Oh
least for
yeah, that's
that
not a
or
big
a
deal.
portion of the monetization or something like that. But that's not really a big deal. In a certain sense, like drum and bass producers could use every little bit of help that they could get to get a couple extra little dollars. So if that's
Yeah.
helping them out at all, I'm not really too worried about that. Another quick note about Discord. Discord does work on PC and it also works on your mobile phone. There is an app inside of the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. They both work. So, and like I said, the server's up all the time. You can join at any point in time. So what have you been up to today, Aaron? Anything fun?
Work, which wasn't necessarily fun, wasn't not fun. It was just work, and super long shower this morning, which was great. Which is why my hair is fluffy today, which only lasts like a day or two and starts to get like oily and not fluffy. So that's nice. And did a Zoom video thing with Brie Larson talking about astral projection, and that she's got the video for that, and then I think she's gonna be cutting that up and putting it on places, and we just had a chat about it, and it was cool. So it's kind of what I'm
Sweet.
up to today.
That's a pretty
Yeah.
fun topic. That's for sure. Did you guys go over anything that you felt was worth sharing again?
Ooh, additionally noteworthy. Let me think. So she shared a lot of her experiences that she's had that, and I've had similar ones where being in either from that I've seen or perceived, and or have had other people perceive about me. So we're trying to dissect astral projection and or just our own experiences, because I think she's in a similar place to I am as far as experience goes, and a lot of those dynamics, but that we've both had experiences from in other ways that are we're trying to correlate down. And one of them, um, one of the similar things is being able to see shapes and images. I guess you could say it's almost like remote viewing, being able to project in real time to someone else, or to project to another location, and be able to pick up specific, the specific like area rugs or the colors and the shapes, and maybe kind of fuzzy or hazy, or but they're somewhat detailed, the clothes they're wearing, or general things, but not necessarily super super clear specific. But then finding out that that's exactly what was going on in real time at that location. Or in this one example, it was an engagement she had that was different than she's in meditation. It was different than meditation. Um, that she engaged. It was almost like a dream, but it was kind of fuzzy like that. But it was a moment in time that ended up happening within the next 2 weeks or something, that actually played out in real time. And she realized it almost kind of like a deja vu thing in the moment, but then all the details were there. So I don't know. There's a lot of conversation around that, a lot of interesting other little facets, and yeah, it's a big topic, man. It can cross over into a lot of things. I know we've talked. I think our first video, I think we started talking about trying to dissect that issue. Talked about
Pretty
quite a few
early one,
zones.
I remember saying. Well, I think we brought it up an awful lot of times. I think we went into it
Yeah, I
on
think so too.
one of our early episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you get into like sharing of anecdotal experience or something you would like to experience or hypothesizing on what could be experienced, it kind of turns into
Mhm.
an infinite topic, really.
Right. Well, I'm trying to, yeah, and the experience parts, because one thing to hear people on YouTube or online or whatever talk about their experiences or, um, techniques they did, but it's another thing to interact with someone and pick apart like the nuances of like what was your internal disposition there, or what were you thinking, or what were, other aspects that come out from actually engaging in in-person conversation instead of just taking information in, you know, from an outside source that's not in real time, I guess.
What do you mean by an outside source that's not in real time, like a book or something, or like a
Yeah,
forum
or a
post?
person, like an outside of yourself, so outside of a live interaction, so like a YouTube video, right? So it's outside of yourself, it's a video on the screen that's not necessarily in real time, if it's not live, versus having a live conversation with someone. And I mean, well, obviously what we're doing here, but then whatever develops from there, that you may have had the same topic of conversation with someone else, but there's entirely new nuances that come out with this unique person that's in front of you and their experiences.
Definitely. It seems to be one of those topics that you can kind of like bring up with anybody. So, if anybody in the chat has had interesting astral projection experiences, or you're trying to understand your astral projection experiences or your dreams, definitely drop stuff in the chat, drop a comment. Or if you're really trying to dig into this stuff, reach out to us. We do a lot of dream analysis around here, and there's some way that we can work with you and probably help you a lot with that stuff. We can learn so much about ourselves just from these. I mean, I think of dreams as astral experiences, basically.
Right.
So, like, from really just analysis of this projection of self, I think is so beneficial.
What do you think about the amount of dreams that are like messages from our subconscious or whatever you wanted to articulate it, um, are lost due to the fact we simply don't remember?
I have some like non-typical, I don't know that I would call them beliefs, hypothesis about memory that seems to
Hmm.
be functional for me. And so I I don't really like when we say like that we just don't remember, you know? I don't think that
Hmm.
I think of the brain much more like a receiver rather than something that is a storage device. Is pretty
Hmm.
much the thing. And the idea of like the standard like amount of dreams that we remember conceptualization would be the brain as a storage device, right? Like I have some experience, but it's holding them somewhere, and then when I get to a later time, I still have them, right? Where I think it's really
So
more about like receiving and tapping into them, and when we get a strong enough connection, then it stays very prevalent to us, but they can always be tapped into, really.
yeah, totally, 100% agree. But this different way of looking at it too. I think yours is more fruitful and probably accurate. So it's instead of finding this memory in my brain or my mind and then I've lost it, it's a frequency, it's a reality that happened. And so you can tune back into that frequency and then enter back into it because it's a thing that exists.
Yeah, that's pretty much the thing. A lot of the people that I've worked with dreaming, especially the ones that were like really fruitful, to use the same word that you did, they were
Mm,
able to like walk back through their dreams, basically, and they would notice new stuff the more times that we would iterate
right.
going through the dream. And you
Yep.
do have to be careful in this space of people basically just like making up data. But
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ones that are really good at it, they're not making up data. It's just like reliving the same exact thing. It's like deja vu almost, but like
Yeah.
purposeful deja vu.
When you're
And so
parsing the nuances as you go back through it, you're seeing additional nuances and details or layers, but then you're parsing their meaning and efficacy for whatever it is you're trying to perceive.
yeah, and when a person can feels like they can do this, then when you're like you a lot of times when you're doing dream analysis, if you're good at it, there's a long exploratory phase. So you're really a lot of dream analysis would be about asking them more questions than they ask themselves. So
Mm,
oftentimes you'll ask a question that they're like, "Oh, I didn't pay any attention to that. That really would have been a good thing to pay attention to." You know, like they'll say, "Well, there was like some red cars and some blue cars, right?" Well, it's like, but like how many? And maybe we're able to draw something from how many, and they won't remember that. And if they're able to like walk back through the dream, then they can kind of recollect that. And I think there is a lot of, well, I am extremely positive actually from my work with other people because it's direct experience to me that there's a lot of ways to kind of sculpt your approach to dreams that makes this significantly more obtainable. I kind of call it a process of keyframing, but it really definitely requires like some learning to kind of get the nuance of it.
yeah.
And I think this actually helps us a lot with psychedelic experience too and
Mm,
recollecting that. And I think it actually helps with all experience and recollecting that. It's kind of like taking notes, but on an experience. You know what I mean? And it's just
yeah.
taking notes in like a certain way where you're taking like bullet points and then you already have a premeditated method of abstraction of that bullet point.
Yeah.
And when you get that set right, which I think really is a lot for the person, you have to figure out like what's prominent to them, you know? And
Yeah.
this same thing has to do like if you're trying to help someone get better at lucid dreaming, it's very important to like work with things that are prominent to them if you want to have the fastest results with that. Like for my own self, like when I forayed into purposeful lucid dreaming, I had just kind of recognized that when I became lucid in dreams accidentally, I was looking at my feet all the time. And so I
Mm,
started being like hyper conscious of feet all the time. And it enhanced that consciousness of it and that was like linking me into them more often.
yeah.
So, like when you're trying to help somebody learn lucid dreaming or purposeful lucid dreaming, you should really call it, I think a lot of it has to do with they've probably had a lucid dream before if they're asking these kinds of questions. and they've probably had several of them, and it's like exploring those dreams to see what the similarities are, and then leveraging off of those similarities to make them more prevalent. I mean, so that was
Yes, that
quite the
makes
tangent
perfect,
about like
coherent sense to me.
allowing yourself or training
Okay.
yourself to kind of be able to do this more,
To the to the other,
walk through the dreams.
so by keyframing dreams or psychedelic experiences, you're able to retain more of the information consciously out of that. But even if you're not, so it's just a more efficient way to retain the information as opposed to going through an experience and then having to use a whole other experience or meditative experience to tune back into that experience. You're just getting more information out of it the first time.
I think it gives you more effective places to abstract more information from,
Huh.
basically. So it's like if you put it on like a simple number system, say that you were gonna only remember 10 things from a dream, the quality of those 10 things you remembered would heavily dictate how well you remembered kind of the continuity of the dream. You
Mm.
know what I mean? So if you're actually getting, that's why like I call them keyframes, because keyframing actually comes from like animation speak, and when you're doing keyframing, there's always a beginning and an end keyframe. Like you're gonna have to remember those, but then the things that are in between are like purposeful places. You know what I mean? And you start to
Yeah.
learn like what those purposeful, like an area change, is a very very common like progression or end. You know what I mean? So it's usually a
Mm.
very worthwhile keyframe, and due to the fact that we usually cross some kind of threshold inside of our dreams before an area change, like I mean, and this can be very very abstract, like the idea of being very consciously aware of putting your hand in your pocket, but then like when you look back up you're in a different space, right?
Mm.
Like going across the threshold of the outside of the pants to the inside of the pants, or through a door, or getting into a car or something like that. These are generally very worthwhile keyframes, because like if I can remember like uh, how I ended up in the place, how I got to the car, and getting in the car, there's a good chance that I have like some spots where I'm going to be able to use an animation term again, tween, and basically reanimate the dream between those
Mm.
points. And it seems to be very effective, but this is really just something that I kind of actually like made it up. I've never really heard anybody else talk about it, but it very much so came from like my work with animation and 3D animation, and really just like video non-linear video editing. You do a whole lot of effects using keyframes and shit, and
Mm.
like it's really really, well, it's really worthwhile for a lot of
Yeah,
things.
it's a great analogy. It totally makes sense. It is an
Yeah,
analogy, right? Not a metaphor. It's an analogy. Yeah, it is. Okay. I get those
yeah, I
confused.
think so.
Sorry. Yeah, I think so.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I think everybody already does this to some level, but really, I think kind of the most effective things usually are something we already do already,
Mm.
already. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
already do,
Already
and then
do.
we actually like do it with more consciousness, right, and more
Mm.
awareness, more purposefully, and we tend to get a lot out of it. Then I think that has been my experience.
Agreed. I concur with that line of thinking. That resonates with me, Zachary.
So there's
Mhm.
it's been very interesting that over like the last like week or so, that like news and world events has
Do
really like
elaborate.
kind of turned off. Like there's not a lot going on.
Mm.
I mean, there's stuff. The world is turning, obviously,
Yeah. Well,
but there
besides
was
the
like,
the Biden VP candidate pick, other than that, I think yeah, last
sure.
week's
I
been a
mean,
little
but
quiet.
one piece of news, like that's kind of quiet. You know what I mean?
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I
Mm.
really don't. So, I
Just
felt a
making
shift
observations.
back on like I think it was like the third or something in
Mm.
myself, that took like some days to settle, and then some choices to enact. And then it's had kind of like an emergence over
Mm.
that has been, well, for the better for me, if I'm just going to be like judge, if I'm going to judge it. It's
Mm.
felt for the better, but it's felt a lot, well, like a lot less stressful, like a lot less pressure is kind of, it feels like
That's
some of the
nice.
pressure has come off the world. And I don't really mean in like my own personal life, although it has also in my own personal life, but that was really just
Yeah.
because of like choice by myself. So,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure
and I
stress
really,
coming off the world helps too.
In certain ways, I think that is maybe that's a thing, though. You know what I mean? Like you
Yeah.
can. It's like that old story of the Zen monks that are walking home, and the guy carries the woman across the river, and then the other guy's bitching about it a mile later, and he's like, "Why are you still carrying her?" You know, like
Yep.
2020 has been a weird year, right? Like for some people, it's gonna take them some time to be able to like put that down and go back to like just enjoying their life and not having problems with everything that's going on or looking to like
Mm.
butt heads or have a divisive side. There's been a lot of division around this, you know, not just around coronavirus itself, but then there's also like the racial shit. There's the
Yeah, no
police
shit.
aspect of it. What's the government doing? You know, like there's been so many different like potential divisive points, but like I think we should really challenge ourselves to like not divide, basically. You know, be as indivisive as possible without being indecisive. Yeah.
Ooh, good one. How would you or elaborate or the machinations or of fighting to stay united instead of dividing?
Really, I think it has to do with like acceptance primarily. You know, recognizing that like even if someone maybe like stands on a different point than you with wearing a mask, right? That
Mm-hmm.
like that's like one point that you guys are different on, and literally just the fact that you're like having the conversation insinuates that there's like thousands of points that you are basically the same. You know what I mean? So
Right?
we have a tendency to look towards the prevalent difference, and so I guess like the challenge really is to not buy into the difference, but rather take some time to put more consciousness on the sameness. And through that, we can see that, like, while we might have our differences in opinions here and there, really, like, those differences in opinion can generally coexist, you know? So,
So what do
like,
you so like the how do you stop or how do you overcome the divisive culture of like the attitudes of people? I mean, I guess on like Facebook and stuff, you just snooze them or unfriend them if there's something that's just like people take these massive, well, here there's a, I was gonna pull it up on, let's see, hold
I mean,
on.
the
It's a little
answer is
cartoon.
boundaries at the end of the day. Cannot read
Okay,
it. I mean,
I
maybe
know.
if we
I'll,
make
I'll
you
read
full
it. I'll read
screen.
it. No, I'll read.
All
Well,
right.
maybe, but okay. So it's two like gerbils or whatever here. The first one comes up to him, says, "You're either with us or you're against us." And then one of them says, "What if I don't pick sides, but critically examine both and come to a nuanced, informed, unique, individual opinion?" And the last one says, "Kill the traitor." Kill
Yeah,
the
I mean, like if you
traitor.
say that, you're potentially like poisoning yourself against everyone, right? If it's going to be like your unique own personal opinion. But I
Right?
think we should really honor that in other people, their unique take
Totally.
on things, their unique perception. I think that's kind of how we actually honor someone
Okay, and
else.
think like how the psyche or the psychology of, I guess, what would it be, cultural identity, cultural, oh, what's the identification, finding your identity in, or political or whatever, but like the fact that you're different in a state of heightened information exposure in the climate that we're in, that's what's led people to be so viscerally one-sided or the other. They've followed the news or the information or the studies that, seems the most true to them. You end up with a groups of people that are on opposite ends of the coin. But both those people know in general kind of the arguments surrounding those two things, and they feel like they're
Hopefully.
educated. Yeah, hopefully, yeah. They feel they know enough to have an argument with someone on the opposite side and to hold their ground or to be efficacious in educating them or whatever. But then you have someone who's like outside of all of that, may not be aware of the information, doesn't care about that information. They're this unique, nuanced opinion, whatever. Kill the traitor because they don't fit anywhere inside of our binary paradigm here. Like we can't
Sure,
handle
which
the
is kind of like a
strangeness or the
weird thing, right?
in-betweeners.
Like
Yeah.
you start recognizing this unity that exists inside of the separation. You know, like the fact that you're polarized kind of means you're the same. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. So if you're really different, though, like you'd rather win an enemy than gain someone who doesn't totally thinks differently than you even understand. Like you don't understand why they
I
think
would
that way,
not
so I don't want to deal with you.
personally do that, but I think it is a thing that definitely happens in the
I
world.
mean,
Really, like
yeah,
the answer to
psychology
all
of
of
you.
this is like effective, healthy management of boundaries. And
Mm,
most people don't really like manage their boundaries, right? They're either like really coarse or really, really soft with their
mm,
boundaries. So it's like this is not okay in the entire world. If you do it, like it's a fucking problem. You know what I mean? Or they're just like a total pushover and allow like whatever to happen. And
Yeah.
really, when we effectively manage these things, then I think like, well, we watch this stuff on like magnetics and like neg entropy and shit, right?
Hmm.
And like this self-ordering space, realize this is like a really well managed boundary. You know what I mean? It's saying like you need to be like away from me, but not like all the way away from me. So because we have like some thing that we're
Yeah.
doing together as well. And so it's really just like I think an escalation in our ability to manage boundaries. I don't think we're taught very well how to work with boundaries at all. A
Yeah.
lot of like in business coaching and especially inside of sales coaching and messaging big time because like especially in the coaching space, man, like
Yeah.
people. Okay, so the approach of the standard coach is to basically convince the person that they know what to do. And as a byproduct of that, they generally go into like coach mode right away. So they start like solving the person's problems before the person's even like actually a client. And
Mm.
that's not really like a functional way to go about it. If you're doing that, first of all, it reeks of fucking desperation. So like if you're doing that, you want this fucking client bad. When
Mm.
you're first going into any type, especially as a fucking coach, man, like or a coach or a mentor, because you're gonna actually like kind of give a piece of yourself to this person. You're gonna take on their problems and try and help them solve them and all these different kinds of things. So you're really like you're gonna be having a real engagement with them. You need to just as much see whether they're the right person for you. You know what I mean? And this is really so like you need some exploratory stage where you really actually like figure out like what's their intention, what's your intention, where do you guys meet, and you need to really like establish the boundaries of the relationship before you even move on to talking about like are we actually going to work together or anything like that. And
Yeah.
so inside of that space, oftentimes they just jump to basically acting like they're already working together in this attempt to prove that they are capable of working with them. And it's not really a good look, not for their own psychology. Realize one of the funniest things inside of like the coaching space and also inside of like the mental health profession with psychiatrists, they don't take into account managing their own mental health. Right?
Right.
So, as a byproduct of that, they have a tendency to do things that are detrimental to their mental health and not really like kind of curating who it is that you are actually going to work with. This is beneficial not only for you, but also for the client. You know, it's just so beneficial, but it's all about this boundary establishment and being willing to actually like hold it. So a lot of times when I'm working with this sales, business management, mentoring people on how to coach, things like this, it's very much so about getting them to be like, well, for instance, I just advised someone the other day that like they need to, right out the gate when they're getting onto phone calls, they pretty much need to be like, okay, what's this call about? Why are you here? What do you want from me? How do you see this relationship? Right? Just because
Yeah.
they've had too many engagements inside of the things that they're doing, where it's like they're having like one, two, three calls with what is functionally like a potential lead, but by the end of the third call, they're still not really entirely sure whether they're ever going to work with this person. And really, it's like, I
Yikes.
mean,
Yeah.
is this a lead? Is this a friend? Are you guys going to be like dating soon? Like, what's going on? No
Right.
one
Yeah.
knows,
Yeah.
right? It's all very
Yeah.
ambiguous. And it's actually very beneficial. And most people looking for any kind of coaching, they want to be coached. So they want to be like told
Mm.
what to do. They want you to have the confidence to manage the space. When you come right into the engagement, you're like, hey, really great to talk to you. So, like the first thing that I like to do out the gate is I like to establish like exactly where we're at. What is it exactly that you're talking to me for? What are you looking to accomplish in your life? And why do you think that I can help you with that? You know, and just right out the gate, that's like the first thing you say to them, you know, when
Yeah.
usually like inside of the coaching space, I mean, almost every single person that I coach on this, their first thing that they do is they ask them what the person's issue is. Like, it's not the way to go. It's not the play. That leads right into you
Mm.
basically having like only one response. We have two responses. One is to actually like engage their thing, and now you've highlighted their problem. And so in a certain way, like you're going to lose positioning if you don't provide them some kind of a solution right there.
Mm.
So that's not really good because you don't want to hand out your solutions for free. Right?
Mm.
Like in terms of a business standpoint, you don't want to hand out your solutions for free. But on top of that, you don't really actually have any context for what's going on with them at that point in time. If you get an
Mm.
idea of what they're trying to accomplish, which does not point on their problems, but rather their goals, right? So they might choose to then diverge into their problems big time and be like, well, I got to get over, breaking up with my boyfriend and whatever the case was, right? Like
Yeah.
they might start to divulge into that. But this is, again, another place where like we take another step on the boundaries, right? In this space, we then end up going like, okay, like I hear where you're going with that. Like, let me stop you there. See, can we consolidate that maybe down to that you're looking to move past your emotional issues that you're currently
Yeah.
experiencing? And they're like,
Totally. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
okay. And what else are you trying to accomplish, right? And so
Yeah.
now we haven't
Keeping them on
highlighted the
track too.
problem. We've diminished the problem, kept it on track, kept it in the boundaries, valued my time and theirs, and we've gotten
Yeah.
more exploratory about what we're doing, and we're starting to formulate an action plan. And we're doing
Mm.
that during this exploratory session where we're also checking that we're the right person for each other. And from the business standpoint of it, we're basically propping up our value. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have to position to only work with the people that we are valuable to if we're going to get what we are worth. Any person that's working in consulting, coaching, mentoring, anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're teaching people to do push-ups. It's the same thing. You still need
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
position yourself. So, nevertheless, it's all about boundaries. And I think the world's coming up on a big boundaries place right here. I think the whole like confusion that we went through, like everybody was like, oh, 2020, we're going to have 2020 vision. And also at the same time, like 2020 could be looked at as like the same thing as on both halves, and it all gets extremely confusing. Right?
Mm.
And we're not really like, where is it? Like, there's half of it over here, half of it's over there. Which way do I go? You know what I mean?
Mm.
But what we're really going to find, in my personal opinion, from that is that regardless of which way things go in the world, you're going to have to basically establish some boundaries for yourself. And really, like, this is not a prophecy. Like, this has always been beneficial,
This is
super
this is the
beneficial.
summarization of Revelation in the whole Bible. Here's the prophecy in the apocalypse. You have to learn to set some boundaries.
Yeah, you're gonna need to set some boundaries
That
for
that's it.
sure. So, it's very
Hi,
beneficial
Michelle.
for your whole life, but also on top of that, like setting your boundaries and holding them is really kind of like, it's really good for your confidence. It's good for your self-worth. It is an act of self-love. If you do it in some kind of very putrid manner where it's very like high potential for toxicity, with the people that you're interfacing with, then, it can be a problem. But this is like, you just need to do it right. And if you don't know how to do it right, you need to,
So
read a
that so
book,
there's like,
hire a coach
yeah, I
or a
was gonna say,
mentor, listen to
or just
people,
like, or just practice. You just practice
Yeah,
setting boundaries. You see what
really
works, what
all of it's
doesn't. You
that's
learn the
practice.
nuances.
You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
application, and even like
So,
diverting conversations. I mean, I guess this could be with boundaries or maybe conversational dynamics. So like, here's an example I thought of. So when Angela and I were doing that tour around the eastern side of the United States, and we were just synchronistically going kind of by divine appointment. We had some kind of anchor points in Snake Mound and or Serpent Mound, and because my place went and saw Kevin, who's in the chat. But in between there, we were calling around just people we knew in the area, or people had heard that we were there and wanted us to come by. And so I think we had just heard, and this is on speakerphone or driving. We just heard that he called him. They know we're coming, and so he gave us their number so we can get the address or just talk to him directly and and whatever. And so Angela called, and she was in a level of like regular engagement, right? We hadn't actually met this person before. This is a person who did some incredible artwork, and him and his wife had written some of the, we talked about before, some of the original books on the portals and vortexes in Sedona. And he's done these incredible tons of art, but there's one there, the Pleiades, and some other stuff that was just amazing that we got to see. So we know we're coming to see him, and I'm listening to Angela engage him, but not able to get to the questions that we need answered because there's just like, trying to find that balance with somebody, and he's older, I think he's in his 80s, and so I kind of got a feel for him, and that the correlation. Introduced myself and said, yeah, so and so said that he talked to you and you were expecting us, and we're about this far out. If the timing works for you, could be there about this time, and we just need your address or whatever. Then he said, yeah, no, that sounds great. Please come over. I said, great. We just need your address, and we'll put in the GPS and head over. Great. Okay, great. And so like turn this whole thing from, we could have like 5 minutes of long conversation. There's a difference between just making conversation, right? That happens. It's organic. It's fine. But it was definitely this kind of beat around the bush thing that afterwards we hung up. Angela's like, this is why I need to hire you. Just being able to like get all right, and it wasn't rude at all. It was totally like you said, efficient for both parties. Like in
Yeah.
that dynamic, because we're gonna talk, we're gonna see him, we're gonna chat. Like we're going to see him. So that was most efficient to get down to this dynamic so that we can all move forward, and everybody was happier for it. It was great.
Yeah, totally. It's just kind of like the let's get down to brass tacks so that we can get together and make something. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's really like the thing. I mean, people want to have their time respected, and a lot of people don't really recognize that they are allowing their time to be disrespected by really just like oversharing stuff that isn't really necessary right now.
yeah. Yeah,
You know.
and it's not rude, good or bad. It's just like depends on efficiency of the flow of that dynamic and what you're trying to achieve. Michelle said motivational interviewing is awesome too. What is motivational interviewing to you?
Me personally, or
Yeah,
to Michelle.
or both. I
Uh,
mean, Michelle wants to elaborate. Because I'm not quite sure what the term
I
is
would
or means.
interview people who I find motivating and basically
Mm,
ask them how they perceive situations, what they think is the important things for a human to do. Like what does life mean to them and what is the reason why they're living it and what have they learned from it that they think everybody should know, you know?
yeah.
And for me personally, that kind of stuff is I'm motivated by action plans, you know?
Mm,
And when something seems obtainable, it's very easy to motivate myself to do it, right? Like if I want it and it seems obtainable, I'm doing it. Like that's really actually all it is. Motivation is completely like out of the fucking picture if I want it and I think it's obtainable. You know what I mean?
mm.
So, uh, yeah, that's what it would be to me. I would like to hear if it's something different than that. That's what I take from it when I hear the term. What do you take from it when you hear the term?
Well, now that you said that, that totally makes sense. But like motivational interviewing, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're trying to be the motivational interviewer, I don't know. I haven't thought about that much, and I don't know. Seeing like diving down that'd be super fruitful. The way you talked about it makes more sense, and that works for me too. So you're going out of your way to interview or to engage with people who motivate you. That makes way more sense to me.
Sure, yeah. Or just
For
trying to like
interviewing,
get something that lights a fire under somebody's ass. So you're
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
priming questions towards getting them to do that.
Okay. Here's motivational interviewing in that other dynamic. I thought it's a story that oh gosh, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson shared. I think it was somebody being hired for a job interview, and they come in and they're asked to give like one of the questions the exact height of this building on campus. And it's one thing to just be able to answer the question, memorize the answer, you happen to memorize that, or you know the answer, or you know how to find the answer. It's a whole other thing to know, be able to physically go look at it from the size of the shadow, where the sun's at, knowing relative perspective to get a pretty close guess, but using your own mind, your own tools, your own, critical thinking skills. So that's an interview that's actually motivating, like to be able to teach people or show people or to understand um, the value of that over just having a degree or the right answer.
That is a abstraction I never would have gotten by myself, but I can definitely see where like that motivates a person. Well, especially if you give them some context. It's like, how tall is that building? And don't just memorize the answer or fucking measure it with a laser pointer or something like that. Like, yeah, work for it or
Yeah,
whatever.
go figure it out. Or
Like,
even like giving you an opportunity in an interview, like to show your additional skill sets, be out just out instead of just what's on the resume or just I don't know stuff beyond what's on paper. Trying to actually tune into someone's intuition. That's who you want. You want somebody who's gonna. I mean, it depends on the role, but you want somebody. I mean, it depends on the role, right? If you're hiring somebody to just work McDonald's or whatever, you have a framework for that. You're not necessarily looking for these extras to motivate them, whatever. They're filling a role. But when your jobs where you want them to create or produce, or it depends a lot of them on being motivated, being inspired, being happy, being desiring to work there to produce, then, finding ways to even in those questions to unlock their own inner knowingness or creativity.
yeah, I mean, and that's really like, I think when a person engages their own genius,
Yeah.
the more that they do that, the more they feel motivated just to do whatever
Mm.
that is, you know. The more you see it like come forward, you see this like well with like a freestyle rapper is a way that I see it a lot. Like, I mean, I took up freestyling many years ago, and it was like as I got better at it, I wanted to do it more often. You know
Mm.
what I mean? And I
Yeah.
wanted to like hone more. And there's certain kind of like checkpoints that I felt myself like get to where I was like, I like doing this more now. It's the same thing that I've been doing the whole time. I've been putting rhyming words together to a beat. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's always been the same thing, but at different points of it, I've been way more driven suddenly, and like that drive has stayed. And I think that's because of like the engagement of, well, what feels like a level of genius with it. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? And so Michelle says what you said was the perfect explanation of it. This is a huge comment.
Yeah, it is.
Basically, it's finding out what people's ambivalences, and working from your heart center and teaching others how to work from their heart center. A lot of people don't even know what their own boundaries are or how to establish boundaries, and it's a great way to learn from that. I don't know. I came in on this and I heard you say something about coaching, but have no clue what kind of coaching you're talking about. But motivation interviewing is good for
Good foe. It's
good
good
foe.
foe. What's a good foe?
It's probably good for helping people realistically, but good for also teaching to establish boundaries, for sure. You know, uh, any type of interviewing can definitely do that. You know, if people are given kind of like the peace of mind that they can answer when they want to answer, and if they don't want to answer, like they don't have to answer.
Mm.
And I mean, that's really like a space. Conversation is a place where we can practice boundaries like really, really well. And a lot of the times we don't. One of the places that like I would really like to see this change in the world, because I think the psychological change that happens behind it is significantly greater than the amount of energy needed to create the change. So it's
Mm.
like an over unity device, which is the like we very much have a normalization in culture that a lot of the times when a person shares a story with us, our immediate reaction is to share a resonant story that we had experienced. I do not really think that this is actually like beneficial. I think it diminishes the person that we're talking to, and I think it kind of projects ourselves outside of us. And more often than not, we do this in some kind of way where we're actually like attaching to trauma almost all of the time.
What about when you
And
share positive experiences? You mere positive experiences,
that, I mean, like
non-traumatic
the positive
experiences. Hmm.
experience is better on like, the trauma standpoint, right? And that we're not like realize even in the trauma standpoint, like the person shares this thing because they're trying to heal from that, or they're trying to see themselves be in that space so that they can come to awareness of that. So it's not a bad thing, but it's
Huh.
also like where it's really kind of a problem is like the boundary that like the other person has like said something or shared a story, and we don't really give that story any credence. And that same thing
Mm.
happens whether it's a positive story that you share or a negative story that you share.
Uh-huh.
Like it's not very normal for a person to like share a story and then the person's response is like, "Oh man, that's like super awesome. Like that must have felt really good. Like what was your favorite part of that? Is there some part that you're going to do again?" And actually like dive more into it. And that
Yeah.
really helps a person like it, it does a lot for a person's psychology to like say something to someone else, share a story with someone else, and then that person comes back like engaging and wanting to know more about it. It does
Yeah.
so
Totally.
fucking much to build a relationship, a lot more than you sharing a story so they can now know one about you will ever do. Realistically,
Gotcha.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
that story and that resonance can be condensed down to, oh yeah, I've totally experienced some of that. Like I found that crazy too. Like what was the part that really got you about that? You know?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
when they tell you that, don't then jump into, well, here's the part that really got me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You're not just like setting yourself up to, like get fucking keyed in. You're really literally, it's like you want to know more about their experience with it. When
Yeah.
sometime later you guys can talk about your experience and they can then explore yours as well. This does a
Yeah.
lot for the back and forth of the relationship because it makes the party that shared the story feel like sharing the story was valuable and it was shared with someone who wanted to hear it. And this does
Mm.
so much for your engagement with another person, whether that's business or relationship wise. Like pro tip out there, any guys watching this, like literally, if you don't ever fear going on a first date, ask them like how their day was, and then just literally keep asking chaining questions off of that. And if you do that and you have a genuine interest, you just hit a home run. That's all it took. That's literally all it took. Do that, make them laugh once, you won. Like you probably won already, unless you have some just horrifically glaring thing to them, which is completely perspective based and is no insinuation of you being wrong or bad. It's just not for them. You know what I
Well, I
mean?
think okay. A thought process that comes to my mind, or my experience here, is being dynamic within that. of being scared of rejection, right? Or what if I ask the wrong question? Or what if I ask too many questions and I think it's weird? And like, you might ask, be with someone who like they're weirded out by that, but you're gonna, the odds are it's gonna be more beneficial. And if you ask weird questions, like, I mean, that's what happens when you talk and try things out. I mean, I put my foot in my mouth more than once, or, joke falls to the
My
floor, it just doesn't land. It's life, man. But that's how you
my
try it. And
advice
you
always
definitely,
in that situation is that like boundaries is like a two-sided thing, right? When we're engaging with somebody else, we have to manage our own boundaries and we have to provide with them the opportunity to manage their own as well. And we have to
mm,
respect those. So like if I'm genuinely interested and it's like Aaron tells me a story and I'm like, question A, he responds. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Question B, he responds, wow, that's crazy. Question C. And this keeps going. If there's a point in time where I've asked too many questions in a row, you need to go like, all right, that's enough questions. Like, I feel like we're
yeah.
playing 20 questions now. Let me hear something about an experience that you've had that was similar. And that's when you know, like, you've maxed out the bar on that. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
And, like, hopefully everyone would be healthy enough that, like, they feel fine with somebody being like, whoa, chill out on the questions. That was like
yeah,
22 questions in a row. And so I would like to hear about you now. They care about you. You realize like
yeah,
you've done very well on your faction. If they're like, stop asking questions, I'd like to hear about you. You did great. You did great. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So nevertheless, like
Have
it,
you have you ever had? I mean, because like what you're laying out totally makes sense. Sounds like a very beautiful way to have an engagement like that, where neither person needs to be offended. They're just like realizing those boundaries, and especially, I guess, a lot of it's intention. So the intention, I know when I've been in situations where I'm like, you ask a lot of questions. They'll tell me like, oh, sorry, like I'm just got engagement, change
all
the
about
flow.
delivery. It's like a good joke, you know?
Yeah, and then but
It's
the
like, stop with
intention
the
in
fucking
that,
questions. Like that's not gonna go
yeah,
good.
like
You know
whoa,
what I mean? That's
I got,
probably
I'm
gonna
done. See
go
you later.
bad. I
Yeah,
was like,
or trigger
whoa.
something, or like,
Actually,
yeah,
I never want to talk to you again now. You know what I
or
mean?
it's
So
like,
it's
oh,
all
you're
about tact.
angry. It's like, or
Yeah.
you're angry, and that kind of stung a little bit in my ego because you lashed out like that. Oh, let me make you more mad. That
Sure.
thought's always there.
Some people have that mentality. It's probably not gonna go better after you do that. You know what I mean? So when you're establishing boundaries, that's the thing. Like I think about this from the idea of like masculinity, because like masculinity is supposed to provide like the border for the civilization, right? For like the settlement, and that's supposed to keep people safe from the stuff that we don't want to get in from outside. But there's a very small difference between like a boundary that keeps you safe and a boundary that keeps you imprisoned. And
Mm,
so like it's all about the tact of the wall, right? Or basically like how many gates it has, how easy it is to get those gates. You can go down this metaphor for a pretty long way. I think it's fucking
mm,
great. It's a wonderful metaphor, but I don't think we put enough we don't give enough respect to other people's boundaries because we don't respect our own boundaries and require respect for our boundaries either. And so, as a byproduct of that, we're like worried to cross someone else's boundaries, and then they're really bad at managing their boundaries. So, their boundaries are like really easy to walk over, or they have fucking sharp spikes sticking out of it everywhere, and you're going to impale yourself on it if you get anywhere near it. And
yeah,
if we need to work on this as a civilization, right? Like if we're
yeah,
evolving, we're not the best anything ever could be probably right now. So we need to evolve, and many of those things are going to be interactive evolution. Realize like we talk about toxic masculinity, toxic partners, all of this stuff. Like the idea of subjecting someone to being toxic means you are ridiculous. Okay, there is no sense in that. Toxicity is an interactive property. There is never something that is toxic. Something can be putrid or poisonous or something, but even that poisonous is poisonous to certain other things. It's not poisonous to necessarily everything. And toxicity is about two things that come together and it doesn't work out, right? So your
mm,
partner is never toxic. A situation is never toxic. The
mm,
engagement of you and the situation or you and the partner, that's toxic. But
mm,
that's just because there are putrid aspects inside of it. And very much so, this is like down the exact same line. If we learn to basically manage these boundaries, then like everybody can be their putridness in the right place, and then it will work fine. And it's only when the wrong ones come into the same place that you end up with toxicity. Boundary
right.
management is really what deads this entire thing. If everybody knew how to manage their boundaries, if you feel like you are in a toxic relationship with someone else, like you are very positive of that and it is very true to you, leave. Simple. If you do not want to leave them, then tell them very clearly, this is my established boundary and I will not allow my life to operate in a different way. And if they cross that boundary, leave. Very
Yeah.
simple. If you're not doing that, then you don't respect your boundaries. And how the hell would you expect anyone else to respect your boundaries if you don't even respect your boundaries? So if you do this process or refuse to do this process and you get to the end part of it and you say, I'm stuck in a toxic relationship. No, you're part of the toxicity, okay? Because
Mm.
you will not manage any boundaries.
Yeah.
That's a problem. That's a problem in all relationships, all
Yeah.
interactions. I mean, like, if your body didn't autonomously manage its boundaries to ensure that your stomach and all of your intestines stayed inside of you, you'd have a rough day. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So there's a lot, boundary management is a big thing. I urge people on the planet right now to respect your boundaries more and at the same time respect other people's more too. If someone says they don't like that shit, it's totally fine to be like, okay, well, I do, so I'm gonna go over here and you stay over here. Sound good? All right. And then you go in two different fucking places and then you do whatever you
Yeah.
want. Like, people don't have to change just because somebody else doesn't like it. And your moral boundaries are in question as well because they are arbitrary to your perspective. Not everybody holds the same moral beliefs. They're no different than any other belief. And we
Yep.
need to manage our boundaries around these. If you don't want a certain type of person around you, or you don't want a certain type of activity around you, or a certain way of talking to you, or something, it's your job to manage that space. And if you cannot do it on your own, there are many, many, many capable individuals out there that would be more than happy to help you if you are actually willing to commit to yourself. I
And
know
on
literally thousands of them.
you talking earlier, I was going to mention that Michelle made a comment too. So I think you know what you're saying. I mean, there needs to at least be an internal major conscious shift of leave. It's time to leave. But on a fundamental level, big picture level, and in those micro moments. But then it's like walking that out over time. I mean, it's just a concession for every relationship's different. I know when mine ended that it was a progression over time, knowing that I was leaving in the right way at the right time with the right reasons, and that all did happen. And it got down to a final date, and it wasn't about like reasserting boundaries and they cross them, reasserting boundaries and they cross them. That was already happening. The conversations have already been had in different ways. It's like when there are too many boundaries crossed, you're on your way out. You've made that decision, but then there is a progression that's very, very subjective to the situation, the psyche of the person involved, and how they want to walk that out, and whatever they feel is the right steps for them. Mine was, I don't even know you can how long you could pin the box in a process. I probably saw it coming. I mean, we've been together nearly a decade, so there's a lot of progression leading up to this point. But I saw it coming like maybe a year ahead of time that it was probably almost guaranteed it wasn't going to be a place we could grow together.
I'm not gonna be able
And
to
I,
fix this.
yeah, like it's not. I mean, that I've tried to the point that my growth now affects her negatively. It creates even more
Do you think
toxic
at this point
interactions
in
between
time
us.
that you maybe should have drawn that line earlier?
It's a good question. I the reason that I can say that I've said before on the show, and I still feel that I'm completely satisfied with everything I've experienced and done in this life, in this world. The things I learned and experienced in myself, of all the things we talked about in psychology and love and trauma and self healing, but being that and holding that space for another person and getting to know them for a decade and intimately asking all those questions, getting to know them. Like, what a beautiful journey that is, even though there's a lot of pain there. Like, I can't even describe. I could write books and I spend the rest of my life writing books of everything I experienced there. I value that so incredibly highly, like more than seeing the pains in certain ways things played out. It's super, super value at that point, looking at that point there. Yeah.
So yes or
And
no?
so, well, no, like at from there through the whole dynamic of how it played out and when I left, there's things I'm now reassessing in new lights based on the way things have ultimately played out. Where since when I left, it wasn't overnight. It's not like overnight. Part of leaving, I guess, is when I actually left, then there was still a prolonged process of the separation between us. That's when I left the home. But then there was still a slow separate, ideally a slow and coherent separation, conscious uncoupling, right? Or going for that as much as possible. So everything up through that point, still, even like when I was talking about it, it's 100% worth it. I can see where I could have chosen different boundaries at different times, but I also wouldn't have the assurance that if I that I was leaving at the right time. Like, I don't have any regrets. I don't look back and regret like the things that I engaged in there. I mean, I feel like it's a big deal to say, not because I've just forgiven myself or changed my perspective on it, or like, I have things where I wish I would have done differently, maybe, but there's not like a regret. I know at a heart level and the engagements that I had that um, it was incredibly satiating value
I
through
feel
that
like
whole
my
dynamic.
question is more like in hindsight, which is probably a little more 2020 than the
It's
than it
2020 right
was in the
now.
moment.
Two sides of the coin.
Is do you feel like there was a time that would have been indicated earlier if you were able to like see it, where it was obvious that like the differences were irreconcilable and the boundary probably should have been established?
If I knew, I think so. I mean, right. I mean, every decision I'm making based on the highest probability of the outcomes of the decision I'm making, of knowing them, the decisions they will likely make based on the upcoming events, days, weeks, months ahead, each step of the process. So I feel like with the information at this point, maybe I need more 2020. I'm certainly open to that. I see more like or time and reflection of the nuances of my life that affect me subconsciously that I know affect me, and self-sabotaging behaviors in general and in minor ways and whatever. And so I feel like there's threads there, but I don't fully see them or perceive them at this point. So up until this point, I don't see how I could have seen it coming differently.
Well, it's not about like putting yourself back there. It's I'm asking really more for like a kind of a post analysis, right?
Yeah.
Like, and not like, rewind yourself and knowing what you knew then, would you do something different than what you did? I think you would do exactly what you did if you went back to the exact same place in time. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
know anything different. You probably already made the choice that was like
Yeah.
what
Well,
you
yeah, I
felt was
mean,
right
like,
in
but
the
I feel like,
moment.
okay, yeah, right. Well, so if I knew how it was going to play out now, I could look back and yeah, I would have done, there's at least one specific thing I would have done in the last 6 months differently. Just one. Really, almost just one.
So I
And that
wanted
was,
to point to this real quick. Michelle was saying that it doesn't work like that, though. So when you try to leave, it's not that easy. The brain does what the brain does to protect itself. I totally empathize with where you're coming from with this. I think we are pretty much ruled by our monkey mind in the default mode network, and really like allowing a relationship in your life that does not match your set of boundaries is not actually you protecting yourself. It's actually you hurting yourself. And at least that is my personal take on the situation. And so I think we think we're protecting ourselves. I think we're really actually more just like attached and afraid. It's not really a protection mechanism. It's not like a, well, it's not a fight mechanism. It's a flight, but more like a freeze mechanism. Since we can't go and we can't do anything about it, we then end up going, like, oh my gosh, we just have to stay. But these can'ts aren't real can'ts. Like, I mean, even if you're, I know that this is a lot easier for a man than a woman in the world generally, right? There's a lot of situations where women are in a relationship and they do not actually even feel safe leaving the relationship. There are people who are willing to help with this out there in the world. Hopefully, people are aware of these and they're able to get access to them and things like this. If that's actually a situation, maybe that completely lays outside of here. And then I would agree with this protection mechanism. Like, if I think that when I, like, oh, I'm going to break up with my girlfriend and I'm going to leave and I'm going to do it completely respectfully, but I know regardless of that, she's probably going to murder me in my sleep within the next couple days anyways. Maybe I actually have some type of, there is actually a protection mechanism that's like, okay, I need to do this surgically. You know what I mean?
right?
I need to make sure that like I'm protected inside of this situation. And so like on those levels, like this is by no means saying that like jump off any cliffs. It's really just more a treatise on actually respecting your own boundaries and being willing to set them and really,
Okay,
well,
but
hold
the
yourself
jump,
accountable and reality accountable for being the life that you want to have. I think we too easily roll over and allow basically us to have our own selves to have a bad life because we don't choose to establish boundaries, break attachments, overcome fears, etc. Like, I mean, it's really easy to let fear stop you from doing something that objectively is quite obviously good for yourself. You know, so
right? Okay. I just want to advocate for the other side because I feel like, or the other aspect, additional aspect of that, of being inside a dynamic that from the outside could be seen as overly abusive or one-sided or negative to me. But it was a mine that I found incredible things I was mining from it that were beautiful to me. So my boundaries were fluid in the ways that I gained the things that I was desiring, the connection. I mean, ultimately, it's connection, and the ways that I was connecting with her, and the ways that I was understanding her as a person and her traumas, and loving her and honoring her, and like the things it did inside of me to be able to connect with her in that way. And again, when it got to time for that to change or to grow away from that dynamic, I was always willing to let that go, but it wasn't until that became unbalanced, until the negative became too negative for the whatever I was mining from that dynamic. So there's a shift, but it wasn't even then that there's the value to the longevity of the relationship, to how to walk that out. And I'm not saying right or wrong, but to me, it mattered to me to walk that out relative to the time we're together and the different dynamics we had in place, and to be as healthy potentially for both of us moving away from this. That's not causing her more trauma or something that we get that it could potentially be beneficial for both of us. And it almost was. Almost went really, really well. But I don't know. There's just different, I guess, waves and ways to respond to all that. I guess like they're all valid.
There like a synthesis of your point there. It was very roundabout.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. Nope, I don't. We'll have to go with the roundabout. I got caught off by a comment, I think, in there at 1.2, and it threw me off. So hopefully that resonates with someone. Let's watch the sunset down behind me. And there's a sunset from Michelle, or Avatar's sunset. That's funny. Just noticed that.
So since we kind of have been talking about like boundaries, which really very much so has a lot to do with fears, and the hour is about up, I wanted to actually well, I wanted to put somebody on a little bit, even though we don't have a very big following. He had a bigger following than us, but like I'm really appreciating what he's doing. He's a
Cool.
freestyle rapper. You probably heard of him before if you like do a lot of YouTube. His name is Harry Mack. He's been on Ellen DeGeneres show and stuff like this, so he's been some mainstream stuff too. Really good freestyle rapper. He started doing stuff on Twitch recently with a whole lot of chat interaction, and actually like on his first stream that he did on there, he ended up so he has a section where he'll like let everybody, he picks 3 topics and then people get to vote on it for which one he's going to do. And he ended up doing one on phobias, and it's all like about fears. And like first and foremost, like it's amazing that a guy can rap like this off the top of his head, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like on like a concept and shit. But like we are going to lead out with that in a second. And really, guys, like challenge yourself to be better than you were the day before. If you're really doing that and you're doing what you can for yourself, even if it's small. If you do small things for a really long time, there's a meme out there that's going around nowadays. It's like it says like it's 1 times 1 to the 365th, right? And so like 1 times 1 in parentheses to the 365th. So you're doing that 365 times. The answer to that is 1. Right? Like that's what it turns into, because it's 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1. But if you are 1 times 1.1 even, and you do it by that, you end up with like a 37 by the end of the year. And I think this really mathematically really shows us a good picture of what like even just a small step every day, knowing that you're doing something that is worthwhile for yourself. This shit can add up massively. Compounding interest, if you are not familiar with it, is your financial friend and one of the most efficient ways to gain energy. So really, like, challenge yourself to put a step in every day towards what you really want to be. If you don't know what you want to be, if you're having trouble defining your dreams, if you feel like you're completely locked with fears, or you're alone, or you're just being completely stopped from your success and you're committed to overcoming these things, reach out to us on one of our social media platforms. We have plenty of people who work with this, a wide range of resonances for you to work with from a wide range of backgrounds at a wide range of different price formats and engagement levels and different modalities. And really, like, believe that your life can get better and start looking out for those people and willing to engage yourself. And I assure you that it most definitely can. So do I have this queued up right?
And you're welcome, Michelle, and thank you for all your conversation.
Was this where it was? I hate when I'm looking for something and then like I think I found it and then I have not quite found it yet.
Yep.
You know what we're actually gonna do? I'm gonna find a spot. I'm gonna find a spot where he stops for a second and starts back up. All right, so I'm going to screen share this also, and this part that he's actually doing here, he's taking words live from the chat and then freestyling them in there. And I mean, you know, when you have like hundreds and hundreds of viewers, those can come quite fast. And it's actually really, really cool because it's like, you know, getting him to be able to like rhyme your words. You can like kind of tune the thing down the way that it's going. So, you know, either, you know, enjoy and listen, or if you are also watching, maybe pay attention to the chat that will end up being on the screen when I share this. I'm actually going to share it now so that we can see exactly where it is. Make that bigger. There we go. And so on the screen here on the left side, you will see that oftentimes he'll like select words and then he'll end up including them in the things that he says. We're going to let this roll for a little while. He is Harry Mack, HarryMack official on Twitch. And you can also find him Harry Mack on YouTube as well. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Sorry we didn't get to some of the comments. That's how it happens sometimes. Please come around more. We'll get to know each other more, and hopefully we can be a lot of benefit to each other's lives. We really appreciate you all for showing up. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click the notifications, check out all the other social media channels, and definitely join up in the Discord and get that shit set up so that maybe at some point in time you could partake with the community in a more active and direct way that will undoubtedly bring some fun to your life and hopefully to the life of others in the community. So thank you very much to Harry Mack for, well, really just streaming this on Twitch with beats that he made and stuff that he did. And so it's all good. And yeah, thank you everybody for being you. And we will see you again probably tomorrow after Frank's show. Make sure to catch We Are Fearless with Frankie Fearless on YouTube tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific time. That runs until about 8 o'clock and a little bit after it usually, and then our show usually starts after that. Hope you all have a wonderful night, and we will see you tomorrow.
Y'all can tell that my flow is even when I'm burping, I will return. Like the mic on fire, I'll be ready to burn. Let's go. My flow deadly. I got the sauce, kinda like some spaghetti. I drop it heavy, they throwing all the cheers. Work the lovely lace, cause we really up in here. I make y'all disappear when I'm dropping these songs. I'm the greatest in the game, yeah, they call me LeBron. And I come with the lyrics they consider quite major. I slice through a hater, kinda like a lightsaber. Yeah, they trying to copy all my energy. Hopping in the matrix just to holler at fucking Trinity. You in an infinity of fakeness. Yeah, hey yo, I grab the mic and then I make this shit turn up. Word to ASG. Thanks for throwing all those bits that you're throwing at me. Hey yo, you kicked a little rhyme, I think your flow's off. Everything you create be fake like Botox. I'm feeling swizzy with the dizzy. Yeah, hey yo, they popping up, they like who is he? There ain't a rapper living who could test me. Swizzy cause I swim and dizzy like a lesbian. I grip the mic, they can't stop it. The lyrical reporter, your career shorter than Hobbit. Yeah, cause when it comes to rhyming, yes, I'm a beast. And when I'm improvising, my spirit is rising like yeast. So let's go. They never bought a bra. My flow is primo, from here out to Victoria. I'm talking Canada, I'm in the session now. Hey yo, they like Harry Mack, you hella blessed with styles. What are some of your favorite words that have multiple meanings? Well, this is absurd. Let me think for a minute, cause I'm trying to understand. You put me on the spot right now, yo goddamn. What's a word that has multiple meanings? Okay, greater, I'll break it down for my haters. Cause greater could mean what you use to cut cheese. But greater can mean you much better than these MCs. Yeah, yo, that's just one I had off the top. Hey yo, I use them in my rhymes, but to stop with thought and comprehend them in the moment like that. Damn, you called me out, homie, and that's straight facts. I put it down and y'all know that I'm the truest guy. I feel like Curtis Mayfield cause I'm super fly. I grip the MIC and run rhymes. Ain't it crazy with me and the tracks getting combined? Hippopotamus versus rhinoceros. Oh my god, the battle, there's no stopping this. I think the rhino gon' win, alright? Because the rhino can charge in with that spike. Hippopotamus is fat, I ain't mad at all. But hippopotamus don't have nose to stab them all. Yeah, I think you need the fucking sharp nose if you really wanna win. Either that or hard flows. So if it was a hip-hop-popotamus with ill freestyles, then maybe he's got the shit. I don't know, it depends on how it unravels and if he could convince it to be a freestyle battle. Yeah, I break it down, man, these rappers, yo, they not smart. They flow is microwave, kinda like a Pop-Tart. I be a king in this thing, I get the spoils. My vibe is royal, ayo, your plan's getting foiled. Improvise it off the top, it sounding like a banger. Every single lyric that I drop is sounding gangster. Yeah, I got a vibe forever, can't erase this. All these rappers stepping up to Mac is looking faceless. No way that you can bend me. Lyrics, I got plenty. I'm a legend like I'm Kung Fu Kenny. Grip up on the MIC and then I'm catching wreck. On the lyrical scene, I get more green than Shrek. Hi H Mac, the camera's working again. Yes indeed, we got it poppin', so for certain we'll win. I'm about to shoot ya, I'm about to blast ya. I'm taking off the planet like I work for NASA, for real. Do what I must, I'm not stopping it. Hey yo, I grip on the mic and then I'm dropping it. No one can master me. They think they better than the Mac, well that's blasphemy. Yeah, I got the lyrics you need. Shout the last name while his first name Rashid, cause that's a legend from the Blazers, and like him I got the temp. But when rappers trying to come along and leave my flow censored, for real. Yes indeed.